Whether you grew up with it as a pantry staple or are only coming around to its salty goodness, here's everything you need to know about slinging some canned corned beef in the kitchen.
What makes corned beef corned? Why is the can shaped like that? What kind of beef is it exactly? If you're embarrassed to ask these questions of anyone else, we've got ya. Corned beef's name is a little bit confusing. Why? Well, the product contains no corn. The corned in the name refers to the rock salt used to preserve the beef. The word corn comes from the Proto-Germanic word for a seed or piece of grain, kernum. Large chunks of rock salt are roughly the size of a kernel of grain, so they came to be called salt corns. This use of the word is very old, with the first written instance of corn dating back to the 800s. According to Bon Appetit, English speakers used corn as a generic name for any type of grain long before they encountered maize in the New World. When indigenous people in the Americas showed Europeans their staple crop, the colonists initially dubbed it Indian corn. This name stuck until the 19th century. English importers started to use the word corned beef to describe Irish salted meat in the 1600s. That means corned beef had its name for almost 2 centuries before Americans started calling maize corn. Spam has an illustrious history as a military ration. The U.S. Armed Forces fed 150 million pounds of the canned ham product to its troops during World War II. Canned meat has its obvious advantages for combat use. It doesn't require refrigeration and can be eaten without cooking.
I don't like spam! Well, don't make a fuss, dear. I'll have your spam. I love it. I'm having spam.
So how did spam lead to the popularity of canned corned beef? According to the Jewish News, the Israeli Defense Forces wanted to feed tinned meat to their conscripts, but they had a problem. Spam wasn't kosher because it's pork. After World War II, the Israeli Defense Forces developed their own kosher canned corned beef called loof. It continued to serve loof to soldiers through the early 21st century because the product could last decades if stored correctly. One Israeli soldier said in 2011 that he ate a can of loof made before he was born. The familiar rectangular or trapezoidal corned beef can that U.S. consumers are familiar with was patented in Chicago by Arthur A. Libby in 1875. The distinctive shape allows corned beef cans to stack more efficiently than round cans. This made it ideal for the military as it reduced shipping costs. Although corned beef's heyday as an army food is now decades in the past, manufacturers haven't found a reason to mess with a formula that has worked for over 100 years. A perfectly rectangular can would stack just as well as a trapezoidal can, but the irregular shape of a corned beef tin serves a purpose besides conserving space. The can's shape allows the delicate minced meat to slide out of its package without breaking. Despite the advantages of this can design, no other product has adopted the trapezoidal tin. If you see that can on a shelf, you know exactly what's going to be inside it. Although corned beef has its roots in Europe, the Philippines might love it more than any other country. Canned corned beef is one of the most popular breakfast foods there. It fills a similar cultural role to bacon in the U.S. The combination of fried corned beef, white rice, and eggs is a classic Filipino breakfast. Part of the country's affection for the product might be that their version is better than the kind available in most of the world. Outside of the Philippines, most canned corned beef is made from finely minced meat. Filipinos use a brand from New Zealand called Palm that's made of shredded beef and has a texture similar to pulled pork. Although corned beef isn't as popular in the US as it is in the Philippines, it's still a fairly common breakfast option stateside. According to The Nibble in America, most canned corned beef is consumed in the form of corned beef hash, a mid-century diner favorite that combines minced salt beef with diced potatoes and other seasonings. Ireland has a long history of raising cattle for dairy production, but beef has not traditionally been a popular meat in the region. The ancient pre-Christian Gaelic religion believed cows were sacred, and most Irish farmers preferred to keep their cows alive to produce milk rather than slaughtering them. Expensive beef was mostly consumed by the highest levels of ancient Irish society, with most of the country's residents eating pork as their animal protein of choice.
What can I say? I am a man of great taste. Very funny.
Ireland didn't produce beef on a mass scale until it was conquered by England in the 1500s, and the English conquerors started raising cattle to export back home. The English Parliament forbade the export of fresh beef from Ireland in the 17th century, so landowners switched to selling corned beef. As a result, the Irish city of Cork dominated global corned beef production for almost 2 centuries. We have the French Revolution to thank for the invention of canned food. The revolutionary government sought a way to deliver food to its troops at home and abroad while avoiding spoilage. Multi-hyphenate kitchen inventor Nicolas Appert figured out that food boiled for 5 hours in sealed containers would stay fresh indefinitely. The British wasted almost no time in stealing Appert's idea, patenting an improvement to his method in 1810, the same year he publicized his new technology. While Appert relied on glass jars, the British used iron canisters coated with tin to make them rust-resistant. There was only one problem: no one invented a tool to open the new cans. The first patent for a can opener in the US is from 1858, over 40 years after canned food had become a popular military ration. Before that, cans came with instructions that told users to open with a hammer and chisel. Sometimes, desperate servicemen would shoot their corned beef to get it open. When the first self-opening corned beef can debuted in 1866, it paved the way for corned beef to become a household staple instead of merely a wartime necessity. Modern corned beef production was spurred by the English conquest of Ireland, and the British Empire spread the product across many of the regions it ruled. The English rulers of Ireland made so much money from selling salted beef that they were even permitted to sell it to England's enemy, France. Both the French and the English supplied their colonial holdings with corned beef, exporting it to Africa and the Americas. As Time notes in an exploration of the history of Spam in Asia, former colonies have a fraught relationship with the canned meats that were introduced by conquering powers. Canned meat often showed up in tandem with violence, but it also served as vital sustenance during lean times. In an era when many people in the countries that invented canned meat view it with disdain, cooks in places like the Philippines embraced canned corned beef as an integral part of the national food identity. In recent years, Western consumers have embraced the delicious canned meat recipes that Asian cooks innovated because of necessity. Irish corned beef production diminished at the end of the 19th century. By the start of World War II, South America had replaced Ireland as the leading producer of corned beef. During the first half of the 20th century, Uruguay led the way, making 16 million tins of corned beef in 1943. The drive to produce more cattle for corned beef is a leading contributor to Amazon deforestation in Brazil. Cattle ranchers who raise meat for Brazilian firm JBS have been linked to the illegal destruction of large swaths of the Amazon rainforest. According to Dig Jamaica, Jamaica joined several other countries in temporarily banning all imports of Brazilian corned beef in 2017. The ban was triggered after an investigation found that some Brazilian meat producers had been selling spoiled products and paying off inspectors to avoid detection. Deli-style sliced corned beef is typically made from beef brisket, but the cuts of meat used for the canned stuff are mysterious. A breakdown of the nutritional content of Hormel corned beef on Innit reveals that the product contains just 6 ingredients. The list is surprisingly short for a shelf-stable processed food, consisting mostly of stuff you would recognize from a home kitchen, with a couple of preservatives added. Despite this apparent simplicity, the beef component of the recipe could come from almost any part of the cow, including some cuts that people don't customarily eat as food in the U.S. U.S. law permits products labeled as beef to contain diaphragm, esophagus, blood vessels, nerves, sinew, and skin. It's not allowed to, quote, include significant portions of bone, but it's permissible to have, quote, the portions of bone, which normally accompany the muscle tissue. No amount of brain is allowed in beef due to the risk of mad cow disease. These rules give a lot of wiggle room for meat packers to decide what exactly the beef in corned beef is composed of, although they do exclude organ meats like liver, lungs, and tripe. You may be hesitant to consume mystery meat like canned corned beef, but if you've ever eaten a hot dog or a Slim Jim, you've likely already eaten parts of an animal you would never cook at home.
Need a little statement? Step into a Slim Jim!
Like most cured meats, canned corned beef uses a small amount of sodium nitrite as a preservative. The BBC explains that sodium nitrite helps kill bacteria during the curing process, allowing the meat to be safely stored at room temperature. The chemical also changes the color of the meat, making it stay pink even when fully cooked. Although the nitrites in cured meats protect us from food poisoning, they may have negative long-term health effects. People who consume a moderate amount of preserved meat every day are only slightly more likely to develop cancer, and nitrites aren't the only potential carcinogen lurking in red meat. Furthermore, most of the nitrites in a typical person's diet occur in vegetables rather than meats. These nitrites may actually improve cardiovascular fitness. The health effects of nitrites are complex, and more research is necessary to unpack their risks and potential benefits. That said, corned beef is still best enjoyed as an occasional treat, as it contains big doses of sodium and saturated fat in addition to the nitrites. Libby's canned pumpkin starts taking over supermarket shelves when the leaves turn. It satisfies Americans' annual autumnal cravings for pumpkin desserts. Although you can cook and puree your own pumpkin to make pie, most people rely on the ease and consistent flavor of the canned stuff. Libby's is made from a special variety of squash called Dickinson pumpkin that can only be grown in the region around Morton, Illinois. This extra sweet pumpkin makes for the perfect pie filling. But before Libby's was in the pumpkin business, the Libby's Corporation started as a corned beef canning operation, run by Arthur and Charles Libby along with their business partner Archibald McNeil. Founded in 1868, the company pioneered many innovations in the canned beef industry, including the tapered can and refrigerated trucks. The company began branching out into other canned goods in the early 1900s, selling sauerkraut, A1 sauce, fruits, and vegetables. Libby's bought the company behind canned Dickinson pumpkin in 1930, and it's been known by the Libby's name ever since. As we've discussed already, the British invented canned corned beef as a way to preserve and export Ireland's cattle in the early 19th century. Jewish deli corned beef, the sliced cured brisket you order piled high on rye with spicy mustard, has a much older history. Curing meat in brine has been a Jewish tradition since ancient Hebrews started pickling meat to eat during Tisha B'Av, a commemoration of the destruction of the Temple in Jerusalem. At the time, priests thought that the curing process made the meat less celebratory and more suitable for the somber holiday. This tradition of cured red meat continued all the way through the 1800s, when Jewish Germans ran delicatessens inspired by the charcuterie shops of France. When German Jews began fleeing en masse to America to avoid persecution in their home country, they opened delis all over the U.S. that served corned beef brisket. These Jewish immigrants often settled in neighborhoods close to Irish migrants who had escaped the potato famine. The Irish, many of whom had been workers in the corned beef industry before they immigrated, began buying corned beef brisket from kosher butchers. This ultimately solidified it as Irish food in the American imagination. There's a lot more to making canned corned beef than just dumping some meat in a can. From choosing the cut of meat to adding preservatives to sterilizing the can, this is all that goes into it. There are a few different ways to make canned corned beef. Science Direct describes one method in which the meat is canned without being cooked or cured. More commonly, though, it's pre-cooked and cured before going through the canning process. Delighted Cooking confirms that this is the case with most canned corned beef products. This method is sometimes called hot packing in the canning community, according to Wild Heaven Farms. While most consider beef safe to be canned raw, also known as raw packing, hot packing has its benefits. For one, hot packing can ensure that meat will keep its shape. This also prevents it from sticking to the sides of the can, which is definitely handy from a consumer perspective. Once it comes out of the can, it's preferable that canned corned beef stays formed into a solid block, which enables it to be sliced or diced for preparation. Cooking canned meat first helps to make it into a ready-to-eat final product. Around the 1600s, the British came up with the name corned beef to refer to beef cured using these kernel-sized pieces of salt. Although you may not see these large pieces of salt in your can of corned beef, salt is still a primary ingredient. However, since the meat in canned corned beef is usually cooked before canning, salt isn't the only thing helping with preservation. According to one Quora user who claimed to have worked for a canned corned beef processing plant, salt is added after the meat is cooked. This helps manufacturers to more easily obtain a concentrated meat product. The large grains of salt added after cooking also provide flavor to the final product.
How is that? Salty.
Canned corned beef falls under the category of processed meats in a few different ways. The first reason it's processed, according to PBS, is simply by virtue of it being canned. Second, as Meat Science explains, processed meat can also refer to cuts that are cured or smoked, such as sliced ham, Canadian bacon, pastrami, and others, corned beef among them. Third, because canned corned beef is also refined into smaller pieces during production, it's considered processed by that definition. The meat within a can of corned beef may start in large pieces, but after cooking and salting, its shape starts to change. During this stage of the production process, canned corned beef must be minced or ground up before getting packed and shaped within cans. For this reason, it qualifies as a type of restructured meat. Meat Science defines that term as meat made from flaked, ground, or sectioned beef or pork, which is shaped into roasts, steaks, or loaves. No matter what method is used to break down the canned corned beef, it must also be chopped up to take on a new shape. When fresh corned beef, not the canned stuff, is being made, a few spices are usually added. Seasonings including black pepper, coriander, allspice, dill seeds, and mustard seeds are used to flavor the meat, giving dishes such as corned beef and cabbage their flavor. But canned corned beef is different. Check the ingredients list of cans of Hereford or Palm canned corned beef, and the only seasonings listed are salt and sugar. And the salt serves more as a preservative than as seasoning. Sugar is added to aid in the preservation process, as well as cancel out some of the taste from all the sodium, according to Meat Science. Another preservative you'll often find listed is sodium nitrate. It's an ingredient in Iberia and Excelsior's canned corned beef. This ingredient gives the meat a pinkish color, which canned corned beef is known for having. It also extends its shelf life and improves the flavor. According to WebMD, there are some health concerns surrounding sodium nitrate involving its link to diabetes and heart disease. Some sources recommend against consuming too much of it. The BBC explains that sodium nitrate is added to canned meat during the middle of its production process, when a preserving liquid made of salt, water, and sodium nitrate is usually mixed in. Then the mixture is injected into various parts of the meat. The injection, as well as the addition of water, helps to ensure that the whole meat product will be preserved. The cut of beef chosen for the tinned product isn't the same as what you'd buy at a deli counter to make homemade corned beef. As Science Direct explains, traditional corned beef uses brisket, which comes from the cow's chest area, but canned corned beef isn't always made from brisket.
No brisket!
Tough, lean cuts of meat, such as round steaks, chuck roasts, or ribs, work best for canning. According to Very Meaty, canning meat also requires that as much fat as possible be removed. If too much fat is left in, it can cause multiple issues, including rancidity, sealing, and heat penetration. This is why canned corned beef makers opt for leaner cuts that have less fat. Brisket can often be pretty fatty, so that's why canners don't always use it. After the corned beef is packed into cans, another step is sometimes employed. Factories may sterilize the meat-filled cans. As Britannica explains, these sterilization processes usually involve bringing the cans to a certain temperature to prevent bacteria, such as the one that causes botulism from forming. To achieve sterilization, corned beef cans should be brought above boiling temperature, or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. During this process, containers of canned corned beef are placed inside a pressure cooker, then covered in hot steam, allowing both the food and its container to be sterilized simultaneously, Science Direct explains. Not only does this process sterilize the can, but also tenderizes the meat inside in a short amount of time. After the cans are finished sterilizing, they'll be removed from the pressure cooker, then set aside to dry off and cool down. The steps of the canned corned beef production process are focused on making the meat survive in a can as long as possible. The steps involved are pretty laborious because cooked beef only lasts 3 to 4 days in the fridge, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. However, canned corned beef will last much longer. According to Very Meaty, unopened cans will last 3 to 5 years on the shelf. Once opened, though, canned corned beef's days are numbered. Leftovers will only last 3 to 4 days in the fridge. It's best to keep it stored in a glass or plastic container. If you opt to put your leftovers into the freezer, corned beef out of a can will last around 3 months, according to Still Tasty. Survival Freedom recommends putting your leftover canned corned beef into freezer-safe storage bags. Canned corned beef is produced so that it is ready to eat right away.
And now, who's ready to eat my meat?
It's not necessary to cook the meat before eating it, but before you start chowing down, you may find that just getting the can open comes with some unique challenges. Square cans of corned beef must be opened with a key. Luckily, this key comes attached to each can. Following the instructions carefully will best ensure your can gets opened. Instructables advises that you remove the key and find where a small metal tab protrudes from the side of the can. Next, place the tab through a hole in the long part of the key. Finally, rotate the key around the side of the can, bringing the tab with it. This will create a cut in the can's side that runs along the entire edge. When you're finished, the entire top of the can can be removed, exposing part of the inner brick of meat. If eating the meat out of the can with a fork isn't for you, there are plenty of ways to use the meat in recipes. Yummy recommends going light on the salt when using corned beef and cooking. Some ways to eat canned corned beef include corned beef hash with eggs, a quiche, or egg rolls. Despite the convenience of canned corned beef, it's not considered especially healthy. According to Very Meaty, canned corned beef is high in sodium, as you might expect, given how important salt is in the production process. It's also pretty high in fat and cholesterol. It's been linked to illnesses like heart disease and cancer. However, some potential nutritional benefits come with eating canned corned beef. It typically has no carbohydrates, and each serving is high in protein. Ox and Palm brand corned beef, for example, has 11 grams of protein per serving. The Mayo Clinic suggests that a 165-pound person should consume about 60 grams of protein per day. So a serving of corned beef is a good start toward that goal.
snouts, tongues, feet, and a whole lot more. Once you find out what's inside a can of corned beef, you may never eat again. From time to time, you might find yourself wondering just what kind of meat you're eating when you open up a can of corned beef. You might even have cause for concern, as meat byproducts such as hot dogs and deli meats are often made from less than stellar cuts of meat. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, meat byproducts can contain small amounts of fat, connective tissue, snouts, tongues, tripe, and giblets. In other words, if there are edible bits left of the animal after the preferred cuts have been removed, the leftover trimmings are added to sausages and deli meats.
If that's how they make hot dogs, I don't want one. I'm good. That was cuz.
What bits of beef actually go into corned beef? First, let's deal with the deli version of corned beef. As you might expect, deli corned beef is better quality than the canned stuff. Generally, it consists solely of cured brisket meat. Simple enough, right? However, when it comes to canned corned beef, things start to get a bit murkier. While the product certainly does contain the lean end of the brisket, producers aren't often willing to reveal what else is mixed into their recipes. For instance, if you look up Hormel's canned corned beef on Innit, you'll see that the label simplifies the meat mix to merely beef. And beef, as hot dogs often demonstrate, can apply to just about every scrap of meat on a cow. Skin, feet, blood, you name it. If it's edible, it's probably going to be used for something, and the chances are good that your can of corned beef contains at least some of these scraps. It's probably fair to say then that corned beef isn't for everyone. But hey, that's true for a lot of other things that people enjoy eating. After all, Cheese Whiz exists for a reason. The best you can do is make changes to your diet based on what we do or don't want to put into our bodies. Or you can just keep chowing down on that corned beef without worrying too much about what's inside it. Who are we to judge?
Which canned corned beef tastes best when it's cold? Which tastes best hot? Which tastes awful at any temperature? Keep watching for our ranking of canned corned beef brands from worst to best. If you want tasty Vienna sausages, opt for Armour. But if you're in the market for canned corned beef, stay far, far away. First off, the texture is so fatty and jello-like that it doesn't even look like it's meant for human consumption. Second, if you dare take a bite of this canned meat, you'll find that it lacks any savory goodness that should be a requirement of canned corned beef. If you absolutely have to buy corned beef from Armour, go with the corned beef hash. By adding potatoes to the mix, it improves the texture and taste a bit, though it's still a bottom-tier option. Although it sounds finger-licking good in theory, ox and palm corned beef is a major disappointment in practice. It's made from first-rate Australian beef that's been grass-fed, and it's free of antibiotics and hormones.
Ox and palm is P&G's pride and the world's favorite.
Sadly, though, it's just not worth it. The primary issue is inconsistency. From can to can, you never know what to expect from ox and palm. But even if you get one of the better cans, you'll still be massively underwhelmed, especially when factoring in the high price. It's way too fatty, and while the taste is okay, it's nothing to write home about. To make matters even worse, in 2021, Ox and Palm had to recall nearly 300,000 pounds of canned corned beef, so skip the gamble and pick a better brand. Chefmate is owned by Nestle, the Swiss conglomerate that's worth more than $300 billion. But despite the pedigree of its ubiquitous parent company, Chefmate corned beef hash is so boring that you'll yawn after each mouthful. The ingredients list insists that each can has corned beef, potatoes, and onions, but it tastes like it's purposefully made to be as flavorless as possible. The only flavor you'll be able to notice is a dash of saltiness, and that's about it. And on top of it all, Chefmate corned beef hash is also extremely greasy. So be kind to yourself and just say no to this brand.
Just say no.
Be sure you know what you're getting before you purchase a can of Underwood corned beef spread. As the name implies, this is a spread. The difference from regular corned beef may be more drastic than you're anticipating. It has a saltier, stronger flavor as well as the consistency of toothpaste. The best way to eat Underwood spread is to put some on a cracker, and a little goes a long way. If you make the mistake of using a heap of this spread to make a sandwich, you'll likely be grossed out. If you use this spread correctly, though, you won't be thrilled, but you can at least avoid ruining your meal. Iberia is a brand that's been around since 1930 that can be found in Spain, Latin America, the Caribbean, and the United States. All of its canned meat offerings will leave a smile on your face thanks to their taste. Unfortunately, the texture of its canned corned beef holds it back from climbing higher on our list. The best corned beef is moist when you take it out of the can. Iberia canned corned beef, however, is too dry and crumbly. It too easily breaks into tiny pieces, and it's not easy to put it back together again. Another issue is the greasy taste that'll have you thinking twice before ever buying this brand again. If you pick Excelsior, make sure that your kitchen is well ventilated. That's because this brand has a really strong smell, and it's not a pleasant aroma. Instead, it smells like canned dog food that expired many moons ago. The good news is that Excelsior tastes a lot better than it smells. As an added bonus, there's also nothing to complain about in terms of texture. That said, despite the positives, the smell is probably all you'll be able to remember. So don't settle for something that'll stink up your kitchen when you don't have to.
It stinks!
The first brand on this list that you won't regret picking is Great Value. Not everything about this Walmart store brand is worthy of your hard-earned dollars, but it's good enough to serve its purpose, especially when you factor in the low price. Texture-wise, Great Value is close to perfect. It holds its form whether you want to eat it hot or cold. Flavor-wise, though, it's not quite as rosy. The main problem is a subtle yet unmistakable metallic taste. When it first enters your mouth, it'll instantly hit you, and once the aftertaste kicks in, the metallic flavor reemerges. It's not bad enough that you'll want to spit it out, but it's still pretty annoying. Canned corned beef is popular in the Caribbean, so considering that Goya is known for selling Caribbean food items, it's no wonder that Goya corned beef exists. And it's definitely above average, but only if you warm it up first. The best canned corned beef tastes great regardless of whether you eat it hot or cold, but this isn't something you'll want to eat at lower temps. The texture is too rubbery and the flavor is muted right out of the can. When you heat it up, though, the texture drastically improves and the realistic beef-like flavor emerges. If you always heat your canned corned beef, you're good to go. Otherwise, look elsewhere. Back in 1937, Hormel introduced Spam to the world. Even if you think Spam is disgusting, you should still give Hormel corned beef hash a try. It's bursting with flavors and surprisingly hearty. If you eat it for breakfast, you can be sure that you'll start your day on the right foot. Simply put, there are good reasons why this is one of America's top-selling corned beef hash. Be forewarned, though, that when you go shopping for this brand, you'll need to be on your toes. If you accidentally buy Hormel corned beef instead, you'll be mighty disappointed. This version isn't even comparable to the hash. The texture is too mushy and the flavor is too nondescript. You might taste a little bit of salt, but that's about it. You can think of Grace corned beef as the opposite of Goya. Whereas Goya needs to be served warm, Grace is much better when it's cold. Open the can, cut off a slice, and put it directly on your sandwich. That's all you need to do to make a wonderful meal. Even if your sandwich is just bread and corned beef, that's still enough for culinary success. If you warm up this corned beef instead, it won't be completely ruined as it's still easily above average. Grace was founded in Jamaica a century ago. Today, the company and its subsidiaries operate across the Caribbean, UK, and Central and North America. It's one of the most popular brands on the island, and you'll immediately understand why after your very first bite. You may need to grab a map to understand Argentina corned beef. Argentina is just the brand name, as the South American country actually has nothing to do with this product. In fact, this particular brand is owned by Century Pacific Food, which is headquartered in the Philippines. And interestingly enough, Argentina corned beef is made in the United States, which is actually rare in this industry. Meanwhile, Brazil, Argentina's neighbor in South America, is the leading manufacturer of canned corned beef. Once you forget about the geography and let your taste buds take center stage, you'll discover that this corned beef is actually really good. Look for the shredded version if you want a unique treat, as it's firmer and less fatty compared to other brands. And to enhance the flavor, it comes in a delectable sauce that adds an extra savory dose of meatiness.
So meaty.
If you're looking for canned corned beef that tastes like it's homemade, go for Exeter. It comes in a slick retro can and it tastes like the stuff your grandmother used to make. The flavor is a beautiful marriage of beef and salt with nothing else interrupting the proceedings. It even manages to taste fresh, even though it's in a can, and that's especially notable because a lot of the competition on the market tastes extremely processed. A can of Exeter corned beef looks like something that you might find in the back of your grandmother's cupboard, or like a piece in an antique collection. Just make sure that the can says that it's a product of Brazil. If it says that it was made in Argentina, it's a counterfeit, in which case you should eat it only at your own risk. If you want the top store brand of canned corned beef, then head directly to Aldi. That's where you'll find Brookdale's corned beef and corned beef hash. This brand is cheap in price and rich in flavor. The hash may be a little bit better, but neither option will let you down. If you opt for the hash, you owe it to yourself to eat it with eggs. Fry a couple sunny side up and then allow the yolk and the hash to mingle. The resulting combination will be so spectacular that you'll be thinking about it all day. Aldi has a lot of cans on its shelves, and there are a lot of outstanding values to be found. So before you head to one of its stores, be absolutely sure to add this corned beef to your shopping list. If you've ever enjoyed a delicious Jamaican meal that prominently features corned beef and you want to try to replicate the recipe in your own kitchen, then go with the Jamaican country style's canned corned beef. This stuff is amazingly rich and has a surprisingly complex flavor profile. The corned beef is salty once it hits your tongue, and then moments later you're met with a flood of savoriness. And before you swallow, you'll be able to detect a pleasing hint of sweetness. If a Jamaican local tells you to try some bully beef, this is the exact sort of thing they're talking about. While there are other options on the market, Jamaican country style does it best. This brand has been around for almost 4 decades, and it's completely owned and operated by Jamaicans, although the canned corned beef is produced in Uruguay, a small nation in South America between Brazil and Argentina. We're almost to the very best canned corned beef in the world. Hereford doesn't quite rank number 1 on our list, but it's definitely worth trying at least once in your life. It tastes different than every other brand, and the quality is pristine. It's also free of added hormones and contains no MSG or gluten. While lesser brands are known to use fillers, this canned meat is 98% beef. Hereford is a French company that's primarily known for its corned beef, and it's used the same exact recipe for decades. Once you taste it, you may struggle to justify ever switching to another brand. Simply put, the flavor of the beef is top-notch. Comparing other brands to this one would be like comparing a steak at a dirty diner to one at a fancy steakhouse. It's just not even a contest. It's impossible to go wrong when it comes to the canned corned beef made by Libby's. First of all, it's widely available throughout the United States, so it's easy to track down. Second, whether you prefer corned beef or corned beef hash, Libby's has you covered. Both are equally excellent. And finally, this canned meat tastes great if it's hot, cold, or any temperature in between. If a recipe calls for canned corned beef, Libby's is always more than capable of doing a fantastic job. So how did Libby's become the king of the corned beef universe? Experience plays a major part. Since their very beginning back in 1869, the company has focused on canned corned beef. More than 150 years later, it's safe to say that Libby's has mastered the art of this particular canned delicacy.
You like Libby's.
Corned beef. Lifesaver or planet destroyer? How can something that wreaks havoc on your heart health also be such a steadfast historical staple? Cured meats, like salami and other standard cold cuts, are a common meal option, but curing meat, which means treating it with a blend of salt, sugar, and nitrites to extend its shelf life, wasn't popular post-1867. According to the book, A History of the City of Chicago, Its Men and Institutions, meat was cured only during winter until then. So what happened? In the summer of 1867, a certain gentleman named Arthur A. Libby showed that one didn't have to wait for the temperatures to dip to start curing the meat. It could be a year-round production. Libby's was founded shortly after this revelation and set the standards for preserving and packing meat. The beef was stuffed into cans and sealed airtight, preserving the meat. It was a stroke of genius that changed the industry. Libby's outgrew their original facility in just a few years. Eventually, it expanded to the then widely popular meatpacking district in Chicago, the Union Stockyards. A number of meat processing plants, pens, and slaughterhouses came together to occupy a 450-acre swath of land that, according to NPR, saw a whopping 13 million livestock sold annually. It also brought in about 500,000 tourists each year, and while the idea of animal slaughter as a tourist attraction seems bizarre today, it was a big deal then, and Libby's and its corned beef were a part of this important history. According to A History of Chicago, Libby's operations spanned about 10.5 acres in the multi-billion-dollar livestock plant, with 2,500 employees helping churn out as many as 5 million cans of meat per month by 1901. Over the years, with the construction of highways and the launch of refrigerated trucks, the many processing plants clustered in the area for easy access to the railroad decided to disperse out to different locations, and in doing so, they left what was once the pride of Chicago to be demolished in 1971. Opting for canned corned beef, no matter what the form, means that you are not being very environmentally friendly. According to Green Choice Now, Libby's corned beef has a very high carbon and water footprint. But it's not just the brand in particular. Beef and lamb are associated with high greenhouse gas emissions compared to, say, pork or chicken. A little more than 2 pounds of beef generates over 130 pounds of greenhouse gas emissions per UK climate change website Carbon Brief. And that's not the only bad news. Just 1 pound of beef requires 1,847 gallons of water for production, according to the Water Footprint Network. Then, of course, there is the cattle feed, which requires more land and resources. Per a study published in a scientific journal called Animals, 13 pounds of feed is required for a quarter-pound hamburger. To make all the food available for the herds of cattle, large areas of forests are cleared to be used as pasture, a practice that affects ecosystems and aggravates climate change. And that can lead to a pretty bleak future.
Millions of acres laid waste by thoughtlessness and neglect.
Back in the late 1880s, you would have been considered cool if you casually brought out a bright red can of Libby's corned beef for your guests. Not just because of the uniquely shaped can, but that the product was world famous. It had earned a name in international expositions. According to Libby's, its corned beef bagged the highest gold medal award in Paris back in 1878, even before the Statue of Liberty was gifted by France to the US, or the Eiffel Tower rose on the Paris skyline. Over the years, Libby's expanded beyond Chicago throughout the rest of the United States, and by the 1920s and 1930s, it had built plants in England, Poland, France, and Germany. Some Libby's corned beef cans have been in brutal places. For starters, all of the American troops in World War I had a can of Libby's corned beef in their emergency ration kit, per Libby's International. If you think about it, there couldn't have been an easier way for the Army folks to consume 130 calories conveniently. Naturally, the product was popular among those on the battlefield. Turns out it wasn't just used by American troops, but by armies across the globe. The company's contribution to war efforts extends beyond feeding the army. Libby's played its part in getting the world back on its feet after World War II by establishing plants in England, the Netherlands, and Germany that could produce employment opportunities. Today, it's possible to have breakfast in Paris and dinner in New York on the same day, in part because of the pioneer aviator Charles Lindbergh. While Lindbergh's claim to fame was completing the first solo flight trip from New York to Paris, crossing the Atlantic Ocean in about 34 hours, the National Air and Space Museum says that he also explored different international routes alongside his partner, Anne Morrow Lindbergh. But what has that got to do with Libby's? Turns out, Libby's canned corned beef was among the emergency rations that the Lindberghs carried with them on their flight adventures, per the pioneers of Flight Gallery. This means Libby's corned beef was probably part of the very first flight that charted the path from Newfoundland to Europe. But the product, it turns out, went on more adventures than one. According to Libby's, cans of corned beef were also part of Admiral Richard Byrd's expeditions to the North Pole in 1905. There is little else that equals the feeling of having ready-to-eat food after a long day of work. Libby's guarantees that comfort. The meat that's inside the can is cooked and ready to be consumed directly out of the can. You don't even have to heat it. While scooping it out with a spoon or fork is one way to eat it, you could also turn the block of meat into cubes or slices and serve them as hors d'oeuvres. Whether you jazz it up with some seasoning or opt for an already flavored one, like corned beef with smoke, is up to you. Corned beef can be a star ingredient in your turnovers, sandwich, or hash. There are tons of good ways to eat canned corned beef, whether it's with an egg or in a delicious appetizer. Plenty of recipes use it as the star of the show. And given its versatility and pre-cooked nature, it won't take long to turn a can into a full entree that's as fancy as you want to get.
Canned corned beef might not be a go-to ingredient, but for every culinary catastrophe, there's a glimmer of gastronomical hope that transforms this back-of-the-pantry staple into a mouth-watering masterpiece. If you think about it, a lot of good things come in pairs. 2 heads are better than one, the old saying goes, and it's true for food too. Take, for example, the following dynamic food duos: cake and ice cream, peanut butter and jelly, milk and cookies, and of course, bacon and eggs. In this case, make it canned corned beef and eggs. This protein-packed breakfast meat is arguably best served with a fried egg. Even better, opt for corned beef hash with an egg on top. And honestly, keep the bacon too. The running yolk in a fried egg acts like a creamy sauce and helps cut the saltiness of the canned meat. If you want to get fancy, add a poached egg instead of a fried one for the same effect. You might be wondering if it's suitable to sub in a scrambled egg instead. And the answer is no. Why? For one thing, canned corned beef has a specific texture. A scrambled egg doesn't have much texture going for it and can add an unappetizing mush factor to an already soft meal. Don't treat yourself so harshly if you haven't been eating as well as you'd like to be. Self-care is not an indulgence, it's a necessity. So, you're eating meat from a can. So what? Use your creative genes and make something of it. Don't just be plain and mundane. One of the worst things you can do is leave your corned beef totally untouched. Transform your canned meal into something you truly want to eat. Let those fantastic savory smells waft from your kitchen and let everyone know there's a meal on the way they're going to want to eat. It doesn't even have to be anything major either. Even adding some simple herbs will really lift your canned corned beef to another level. They can be dried or fresh herbs. Just remember that dried herbs are more concentrated in flavor, so a little goes a long way.
I like it better than tuna helper myself. Don't you, Clark?
You're the gourmet around here, Ed.
Canned corned beef is considered to be a breakfast food by many. And this mighty meaty meal has tons of potential to be a transformative breakfast experience because it's truly more versatile than you might think. Almost any savory morning meal can most likely benefit from adding or substituting the salty, fatty goodness of canned corned beef. For example, if you're a lover of breakfast tacos or burritos, just fry up some canned corned beef and substitute it in place of the protein. If you can't start the day off without a nice, hearty omelet, consider adding some canned beef, sautéed tomatoes, and feta or goat cheese to your next egg wrap. What about adding some canned corned beef to a frittata or quiche? Or if you're going to a brunch picnic, consider making some crescent rolls filled with canned corned beef, scrambled eggs, and gooey cheese. Butter is delicious, but it does have its time, place, and purpose. Butter is great when used for browning or sautéing, but it might not be the best fat for getting a good crisp. Masterclass notes that butter has an incredibly low smoke point, or burning point, which means that your chances of scorching your beloved breakfast are much greater. Plus, using butter to fry your canned corned beef is also a way to add unnecessary fats and calories to your diet. And it's really not needed. Canned corned beef already contains fat that will cook down and help with the cooking process. But if you really feel the need to add something, opt for refined oils or those with a high smoke point, like canola or vegetable oil. Still stuck on the buttery flavor? Then check out clarified butter or ghee instead, but save the butter for where it belongs.
A stack of wheat cakes with lots of melted butter and maple syrup.
If you've recently been invited to a party, picnic, or other social gathering, it would only be natural to bring some tiny finger foods to show off your cooking prowess and appreciation, right? That being said, canned corned beef is probably not high on your list of go-to items to feed the party masses, but it should be. It's a relatively cheap ingredient to buy in bulk, and it can save you time and money if you can think outside the box. Remember, imagination is key. Hiding canned corned beef inside a fried wonton wrapper is such a great and sneaky way to transform it. Everyone loves egg rolls, so why wouldn't a corned beef and cabbage egg roll work? In today's foodie world, it really is all about creative food fusion. You can also try taking a spin on another finger food classic and use canned corned beef, along with some cheese and taco seasoning, as a filling for some homemade taquitos. You're sure to be the life of the party. Hey there! Perhaps one of the reasons why you don't like cooking canned corned beef is because it inevitably ends up clinging to the pan so tightly that nothing can break its eternal embrace. It's no fun once you've got a blackened, burnt mess to deal with. Lucky for you. This issue could be as simple as switching up the pan that you're using. The best way to properly fry up your canned corned beef, and pretty much any other food that you want to get perfectly crisp, is by cooking it in a cast iron skillet. The durable pan can stand up to the super high temperatures you need for rendering fat, frying meats, and more. If you don't have a cast iron skillet, you can opt for a Teflon or non-stick pan to ensure an easy cleanup. But steer clear of stainless steel cookware, as it's very easy for your corned beef to get stuck to the bottom while cooking. That's a recipe for disaster. Sometimes making meat-based soups and stews can take more than a few extra steps, and that can end up taking more time than you actually have. Using canned corned beef to replace not only the protein element, but also any extra salt, is a great way to use up that magical mystery beef and cut your cooking time down. Think of it like a foodie win-win situation. Carne beef is Puerto Rican stewed corned beef and calls for using the canned version specifically. At its most basic, no-frills level, this home-style stew incorporates the canned meat, potatoes, sweet corn, tomato sauce, sofrito, all-purpose adobo seasoning, as well as sazon seasoning. This is an incredibly simple dish to make and takes less than 20 minutes. Serve it with avocados and white rice, or get really traditional and fry up some sweet plantains. If you happen to have a carrot or two, a few ribs of celery, an onion, and some pearl barley, you can always substitute another grain or rice-like pasta too. Try making some vegetable beef and barley soup, or even minestrone soup with canned corned beef. Or maybe crisp up some corned beef and add it to a corn or potato chowder. The creaminess will dull the sodium, and the crunch will bring some nice texture to your bowl of comfort food. Science states that there is no downside to eating a nice rainbow assortment of fruits and vegetables. And while produce of pretty much all colors can be touted as having anti-inflammatory properties, each individual variety benefits a different bodily component. Another great thing about fruits and veggies is that you can't really have too many of them. The more, the merrier. When it comes to canned corned beef, a dish filled with vegetables will help tone down the sodium level and give your mushy meats some much-needed textural and flavor variety. If you've been eating plain canned corned beef, it's time to liven it up with some color. If you're a little weary of creating your own flavor combinations, just start small and add some potato, onion, and an herb like basil or rosemary. Mushrooms are another great option. Then try roasting some Brussels sprouts along with your crispy meat. Or make a melange of roasted vegetables and serve them alongside your protein sauté. Don't forget to marvel at all the healthy colors. Although canned corned beef is a 100% American foodie creation, that hasn't stopped it from circumnavigating the globe and unsuspectingly plopping itself down at the tables of different international cuisines. In Jamaica, canned corned beef is called bully beef. The canned corned beef is cooked with bell peppers, onions, garlic, thyme, and Scotch bonnet peppers, and served alongside starchy foods like boiled green bananas or rice. The Chamorro, the indigenous peoples of Guam and the Mariana Islands, are particularly fond of corned beef with cabbage and onions. This classic comfort dish incorporates canned corned beef, sautéed onion, thinly sliced green cabbage, and sometimes green beans or eggplant. Canned corned beef also lends itself quite well to the humble and filling casserole-type dish, cottage pie. Cottage pie is pretty much the same as its sibling, shepherd's pie, except that the latter uses ground lamb and not ground beef. In addition to your protein of choice, in this case, that would be your beloved canned corned beef, this traditional, homey British pub food contains garlic, onions, and carrots, as well as tomato paste, Worcestershire sauce, and a few other kitchen staples. And of course, it all gets topped with fluffy mashed potatoes. It all sounds pretty delicious, right? It is, and it's a great reason to keep a few cans of corned beef around for those nights when you want something different, but still delicious and simple. Just avoid the pitfalls.
From bully beef sandwiches to a dip you simply can't resist, you'll never think of canned corned beef the same way again. Corned beef hash is a staple meal at diners all over the nation, and for good reason. Crispy, savory hash is a great accompaniment to so many different breakfast foods, playing well with eggs, toast, and a good cup of coffee. But why let line cooks have all the fun? You should be making it at home using canned corned beef. For at-home corned beef hash, you'll need a can of corned beef, diced potatoes, onions, 3 or 4 eggs, Worcestershire sauce, garlic, paprika, parsley, salt, and pepper. First, preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Then sauté the onions in a cast iron pan until they become soft and slightly translucent. Next, add the garlic, paprika, and a dash or 2 of Worcestershire sauce to the pan. When you're done with all of that, add the potatoes to the mix, along with a generous amount of salt and pepper, and fry it all for a few minutes. Now, pop some of the canned corned beef into the pan and press everything down with a spatula so that the whole mass gets crispy on the bottom, then flip. As the other side crisps up, crack your eggs and put them on the hash. Place the pan in the oven to cook the eggs. After you remove the dish from the oven, sprinkle with parsley before serving. When your appetite is demanding that you jump into something delicious, there's only one way to roll, or should we say casserole. If you have some canned corned beef available, then all you need is a few more ingredients to whip up a super savory casserole. Along with the corned beef, you'll need some thinly sliced potatoes, diced onion, cabbage, a quarter cup of milk, a teaspoon of dry mustard, and a can of cream of celery soup. First, mix the cream of celery soup with milk and mustard. Grab yourself a casserole dish and layer the bottom with some of the thinly sliced potatoes. Then hit them with salt and pepper and scatter the diced onion all over. After that, add the chopped cabbage, followed by the canned corned beef. Layer the top of the dish with the rest of the sliced potatoes, and then pour the soup mixture on top. Bake the dish for an hour and a half at 375 degrees, and then you'll be casseroling your way down to Flavor Town. A bully beef sandwich is simply one that is chock full of that delicious canned corned beef. To make one of these savory handheld meals, you need just a few ingredients that may already be waiting for you in your kitchen. Those would be canned corned beef, a white onion, a can of diced tomatoes, garlic, and ketchup. This may be a simple list, but we assure you that it yields a supremely yummy meal. Start by sautéing the diced onions, tomatoes, and garlic in a skillet. Once the veggies soften, add the corned beef and break it apart with a spatula. Give the mixture a few minutes in the heat until it all starts to caramelize. Once that's happened, add in the ketchup and give it a couple more minutes to warm up. All that's left is to grab a couple of slices of your favorite bread and pile on the corned beef. If you're a mustard enthusiast, a little smear of the condiment will give the sandwich extra flavor and a bite of acidity. If you've ever wanted to dive headfirst into the wonderland of Filipino cuisine, then kick off your morning with this Filipino-style canned corned beef. To make it, you'll need just a few basic ingredients, namely canned corned beef, diced potatoes, diced white onion, minced garlic, halved cherry tomatoes, salt, and pepper. Start by sautéing the potatoes until they soften. Then add in the onions and cook both veggies for a few minutes until the onions become fragrant. Once the pan gives off that lovely oniony smell, add the halved cherry tomatoes and cook until they begin to release all their juices too. Toss in the corned beef and sauté the whole thing until the meat cooks and all the veggies have been cooked to a perfect texture. Add salt and some freshly cracked black pepper to taste, then sit down to enjoy the flavors of this Philippines-inspired meal. You can't talk about St. Patrick's Day without mentioning the classic combo of corned beef and cabbage. For some diners, this is the one day of the year that they will indulge in corned beef. But there's no reason to only enjoy this meal on a single day in March. If you're looking to eat a corned beef and cabbage meal any time of the year, make it easy by using canned corned beef. To prepare it, simply snag yourself some corned beef in a can, along with 4 strips of bacon, coarsely chopped cabbage, butter, salt, and pepper. Start by cooking the bacon until it's almost entirely crisp. Set the strips aside for a moment and start cooking down the cabbage in a large pan with a few tablespoons of butter and a dash of water to keep things from burning. While the cabbage cooks, cut the bacon into small pieces. Then add the diced bacon and canned corned beef to the cabbage and cook it all until you reach your desired doneness. The only thing left is to enjoy. If you want to kick your day off properly with a good breakfast, it's hard to go wrong with quiche. You can add so many different veggies and meats to it that you'll be dizzied by the seemingly infinite number of delicious quiche possibilities. If you have some canned corned beef lying around, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's a savory quiche just waiting to be made with that pantry staple. To make your corned beef quiche, first assemble your ingredients. You'll need that corned beef as well as a pie crust, a half cup of shredded Swiss cheese, minced onions and garlic, 5 eggs, a quarter cup of heavy cream, a quarter cup of milk, and pepper. After preheating your oven to 425 degrees, mix the corned beef, eggs, onions, garlic, milk, cream, cheese, and pepper in a bowl. Pour the bowl's contents into the pie crust, then pop that bad boy in the oven for about an hour. Don't forget to keep an eye on it towards the end to make sure that you don't overcook things. According to the American Egg Board, a knife inserted midway should come out clean. Be sure to take it out of the oven before the center is fully set, as the residual heat will keep things cooking for a few minutes more. Few meals are as deliciously messy as sloppy joes.
I know how you kids like 'em sloppy.
Lady, you're scaring us.
However, the sloppy joe game gets kicked up a few notches when you combine canned corned beef with the regular ground beef that forms the bulk of this classic. Get ready for a zestier version of your favorite messy sandwich, taking cues from a standard old-fashioned sloppy joe recipe. Start by browning ground beef in a skillet. While it cooks, stir in the canned corned beef. For some extra flavor, we recommend adding diced onion as well as diced celery. Once the veggies become soft, add the contents of the skillet into a crock pot. Then stir in the ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and brown sugar. You may also want to add in a dash of chili powder or some diced green onion. The whole concoction will simmer for around 3 hours on low heat. Once it's ready, grab a bun and start eating. When Old Man Winter shows his frigid face and chills you to the bone, there are few better meals to eat than a hot bowl of stew. Why not add corned beef to the mix? For a meal that makes you forget about the blustery, freezing discomfort happening outside, all you need is a couple of cups of water, some canned corned beef, diced carrots, onions, and potatoes. The first step is to get your water boiling in a deep pot or Dutch oven. Then add all of the diced veggies to the pot. This will cool the water down a bit, so let the water reach a boil again before adding the corned beef. Stir it around until the meat breaks up. Taste it occasionally to make sure the broth is flavored by the corned beef, adding salt and pepper as needed. Once it's rich and savory, serve and enjoy. This awesome creation is a delicious marriage between shepherd's pie and corned beef hash. For this dish, we'll riff on a classic shepherd's pie recipe. You'll need a pound of mashed potatoes, diced onion, Worcestershire sauce, ketchup, chicken broth, parsley, thyme, and canned corned beef. Start by preheating your oven to 400 degrees. To make the cottage pie filling, grab a skillet and cook down the onions until they become fragrant and slightly translucent. Then add the chicken broth, Worcestershire sauce, ketchup, parsley, and thyme. Once the broth reduces by half, add the corned beef and let the whole thing simmer until there's almost no liquid left. Spoon the contents of the skillet into a baking dish and top it off with a hearty serving of mashed potatoes. If cheese and breadcrumbs are your things, then you can sprinkle a little on top before popping it all in the oven. Then let it bake for 15 minutes or until the top is nicely browned. If you're a fan of Mexican cuisine, then you probably love a good burrito. It doesn't matter what kind of veggies or meat you roll up in a tortilla, the result is always pretty darn delicious. You might not have come across corned beef stuffed burritos before, but this variation on a beloved classic makes it happen. Grab some canned corned beef, cooked white rice, red onion, diced jalapeno, avocado, thyme, and ketchup. Grab yourself a skillet to cook the diced jalapenos, onions, and thyme in a bit of oil until fragrant. Then add in the corned beef and ketchup and stir the mixture until the corned beef is thoroughly warm. Finally, lay down a warm tortilla and spoon the contents of the skillet in the middle, along with some rice and slices of avocado. If you want some spice, add on your favorite zesty salsa. We all know that just because something is simple doesn't mean it won't taste as awesome as an intricately crafted meal. With that in mind, corned beef spaghetti is one of the easiest dishes you can whip up using canned corned beef. To make it, you'll need corned beef, spaghetti, spaghetti sauce, minced garlic, and diced onion. In a skillet, cook the garlic, onions, and corned beef in oil until the meat is warm and the onions are translucent. Get the pasta boiling in a different pot, then add spaghetti sauce into the skillet and let it simmer. Once the pasta is done, drain it and add the sauce. Then you can top it with a sprinkle of shredded cheese and serve. No matter what time of day or year, you really can't go wrong with chips and dip, as long as you don't double dip.
Double dipped? What are you talking about? You dipped the chip, you took a bite, and you dipped again.
So if you enjoy the taste of corned beef, why not create an awesome dip out of it? It's super easy to make, and if you invite some friends over to share, they'll ask you for the recipe before they leave. All you need is 3 simple ingredients and you're ready to rock and roll the chips and dip way. Grab your canned corned beef, an envelope of dry onion soup mix, and a 16-ounce container of sour cream. Combine all 3 ingredients in one bowl, and once they're mixed thoroughly, let them chill for an hour. Now, call up your buddies and tell them you have a savory surprise that's eagerly awaiting their appetites.
We're not kidding when we say that there are so many delicious ways to get creative with canned corned beef. For this list of corned beef ideas, we consulted a couple of culinary experts, Jessica Nerthling, the Associate Manager of Public Relations and Digital Media at B&G Foods Inc., and Jason Haran, Foods Brand Manager for Retail Marketing and for Convenient Meals and Protein at Hormel. First up is a classic deli favorite. Restaurant Reuben sandwiches typically use fresh corned beef, but there's no reason you can't make a Reuben at home with the canned version. You may even end up liking it better because all the ingredients intermingle. You can go ahead and mix in Thousand Island salad dressing and a bit of horseradish. For the full experience, use rye bread, sauerkraut, and Swiss cheese. To make it even better, toast the assembled sandwich in a skillet with melted butter. And you can ultimately adapt canned corned beef to any Reuben sandwich recipe by just subbing in the canned version for the fresh beef. Another fun idea is to use canned corned beef to make sloppy joes. And of course, you can always get a little more gourmet and make your sloppy joe from scratch. Just substitute in canned corned beef for ground beef and simmer it with grilled onions, peppers, garlic, tomato sauce, ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and brown sugar. Onion powder, garlic powder, salt, and pepper are all the seasonings you need. Then put the mix between 2 buns or pieces of bread. Another option for making sloppy joes with canned corned beef is to use a powdered mix. Cook as directed with the powder and tomato paste and just substitute the corned beef for cooked hamburger meat. There's a certain Filipino corned beef hash dish made with potatoes, garlic, onions, tomatoes, and rice. It's known as Silog. There are actually multiple versions of Silog, and the corned beef variety is called corn Silog. Many variations of corn Silog include a fried egg served on the side or on top. Some people even use grated cabbage in the mix. Everything is fried up together in a skillet and served over rice. Plain rice works fine, but garlic rice is even better. And if you would prefer to avoid cooking the tomatoes along with everything else, you can serve sliced tomatoes on the side instead. Mexican flavors taste great with corned beef, so it makes an excellent stand-in for the meat that's typically used in tacos or burritos. There are a couple of ways to make this happen. One is to simply add the meat to a skillet and sauté it with 2 or 3 tablespoons of tomato sauce and your favorite taco seasoning mix. Alternatively, you can sauté the meat in olive oil with diced tomatoes, onions, jalapenos, and seasonings like oregano, cumin, garlic, and cilantro. For a breakfast version, add an egg to the rest of the ingredients while cooking. Serve the meat in a taco shell or wrapped in flour tortilla to make a burrito. Some ideas for fixings include lettuce, tomatoes, shredded cheese, sour cream, guacamole, and salsa.
What I love about tacos?
What's that? Everything?
Corned beef and cabbage are often served side by side or together. You can enhance the canned version with a few splashes of Worcestershire sauce, spices like paprika and thyme, and herbs like parsley and dill. Another way to add some zing is to sauté the cabbage with a couple of tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. For even more bite, add 2 or 3 tablespoons of vinegar. Season it with garlic, caraway seeds, and Italian seasoning before adding this mixture to the hot corned beef. Worcestershire sauce also tastes pretty dang good in classic corned beef hash recipes. Sauté the canned meat with the sauce as well as diced potatoes, diced onions, caraway seeds, salt, and pepper. Grainy mustard is a good addition as well. And don't forget the option of topping it with a fried egg, and maybe even a bit of brown sauce. One inventive way to turn canned corned beef into a gourmet breakfast is to add eggs, tomatoes, and spices to turn it into shakshuka. All you have to do is add the meat to an ordinary shakshuka recipe. To make basic corned beef shakshuka, simply sauté the meat with onion and bell peppers in olive oil in an oven-proof skillet. Then add spices and crushed tomatoes and make nests in the sauce for holding the eggs. You can also crumble feta cheese or cooked potatoes into the mixture for extra flavor, texture, and nutrition. The skillet then needs to go into the oven for 10 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit to set the eggs. Some basic spices that you can add include garlic, cumin, paprika, red pepper flakes, caraway, and nutmeg. For some extra heat,
Try adding jalapenos or chipotles in adobo sauce. Since potatoes combine so well with canned corned beef, it's not too much of a stretch to imagine how it might combine with potato salad. You'll want to use a variety that really brings out the flavors of the canned meat. The strong profile in a dill pickle, mayo, sour cream, or Dijon mustard-based potato salad works especially well with corned beef. Make sure to add extra dill to amp up the flavor. Another option is to make Irish potato salad. In addition to the canned meat, cooked potato cubes, and mayo, it includes flavorful ingredients like vinegar, dill pickle relish, green onions, Dijon mustard, chopped cabbage, and chopped radishes. You can also add in celery seed, dill, and mayo.
Show me potato salad!
You can use canned corned beef as the protein in any stir-fry recipe. If you want to wing it, start by tossing the beef in a wok together with your favorite veggies. Tasty options include green onions, bell peppers, broccoli, Napa cabbage, and mushrooms. Finish it off with some sauce and serve over rice. If you want to make your own stir-fry sauce, consider using beef stock, red wine vinegar, sugar, soy sauce, chili garlic sauce, and a little cornstarch for thickening. Garnish with cilantro, toasted sesame seeds, or chili garlic sauce for maximum flavor. Another way to elevate canned corned beef is to add it to fried rice, thereby making it an overall more filling meal. Simply season the meat with freshly minced or ground ginger and garlic, then cook it on the stove with chopped onions and mixed veggies. Next, either add pre-scrambled eggs directly to the pan, or push the ingredients to the side and lightly scramble 2 eggs before adding leftover cooked rice to the pan. Then mix it all together with a dash or 2 of soy sauce, or a more complex mixture of soy sauce, brown sugar, and rice wine vinegar. If you're looking for shortcuts, you can combine the meat with leftover restaurant fried rice and warm it all together in a skillet. You could also combine it with frozen fried rice from the grocery store. Consider combining corned beef with noodles, tomatoes, and a hearty cheese. You can go 2 different directions with this idea, either Italian or Filipino. The Italian version involves simmering together corned beef with spaghetti sauce, serving it over spaghetti noodles, and topping it with grated Parmesan cheese. You can also make your own sauce by simmering together sautéed onion and garlic with the meat, then adding blanched and peeled tomatoes, tomato paste, and fresh basil. For even more flavor, try boiling your noodles in chicken broth or water flavored with chicken bouillon. The sauce in the Filipino version has quite the flavorful twist in the form of banana ketchup, which joins tomato paste, tomato sauce, soy sauce, white sugar, and black pepper. Serve over noodles and top with shredded or grated cheese. When combining corned beef with mac and cheese, you could just use the boxed version. But for a more gourmet approach, make it from scratch or turn it into a casserole.
Bless this highly nutritious microwavable macaroni and cheese dinner and the people who sold it on sale. Amen.
To add it to the homemade version, combine the meat with some Mornay sauce. Then follow a standard baked mac and cheese recipe to add the rest of the ingredients. To take it up a notch, cooked diced onions with the meat first, and add a can of cream of mushroom soup before popping it in the oven. You could also make a stovetop version of this dish. Further enhancements include a can of cream of chicken soup and minced onions with buttery cracker crumbs crumbled and then sprinkled on top. Adding corned beef to cornbread muffins is a great way to be both spicy and cheesy. If you're using a whole can of corned beef, grab 2 boxes of cornbread mix. Make the muffins according to the directions on the package, then mix in the canned corned beef with wet ingredients like milk. You can really take things to the next level with diced jalapenos and shredded cheddar cheese. Once you've mixed everything together, bake it according to the package instructions. Another option is a layered muffin that starts with a greased tin and a couple of tablespoons of corned beef. Make a well in the meat and add an egg, topped with a light sprinkle of salt and pepper. Then pour prepared cornbread muffin mix on top to fill the muffin cups and bake according to the directions. Sweet potatoes and other veggies are excellent additions to corned beef, either in hash or baked form. If you want to make them into a hash, start by boiling or baking cubed sweet potatoes. Then combine them in a skillet with meat and other veggies like onions, peppers, or cooked beets. Alternatively, you can add mashed sweet potatoes to an oiled skillet with sautéed onions, sautéed zucchini, corned beef, hash browns, and cheese. If you'd like to make it for breakfast, make wells in the hash and add eggs to cook until set. You can also add corned beef hash to baked sweet potatoes. Start out by baking the sweet potato, then scoop out the insides and mix the fluffy interior with the corned beef. sautéed kale, green onions, and shredded cheese before refilling the potato and reheating it in the oven. Another interesting idea is to incorporate corned beef into a party dip.
My name is Rod, and I like to party.
A strong and flavorful cold dip option combines a can of crumbled corned beef with diced onion, mayonnaise and sour cream, fresh parsley, and dried or fresh dill. If you want something even easier, simply mix together a can of meat with an envelope of onion soup mix and a carton of sour cream. A hot-baked version combines the beef with cream cheese, sour cream, chopped bell peppers, scallions, Worcestershire sauce, onion salt, horseradish, hot sauce, and chopped pecans. Another option brings together corned beef with sautéed onions, cream cheese, sour cream, mayonnaise, Swiss cheese, and garlic powder. It's especially delicious when served inside bread bowls. Corned beef can even be a part of meatballs. You can either mix it in with ground beef or use only the corned beef. Then just fry or bake them according to your favorite meatball recipe. Serve them as you would regular meatballs or alongside cooked cabbage. When making a combined version, mix a can of corned beef with a half pound of regular ground beef. Then add a beaten egg, breadcrumbs, and a spicy brown mustard along with garlic powder or any other seasonings. A corned beef meatball recipe without additional meat can also incorporate chopped cabbage, eggs, flour, and whole grain mustard. Finally, you can go ahead and make corned beef part of your favorite soup or stew. You could choose cream of mushroom or vegetable soups, or opt for a meat-filled stew and make it even meatier. One potential homemade option is a simple soup with shredded cabbage, corn, garlic powder, butter, water, salt, and pepper. Simmer it for about an hour before serving with sour cream and crusty bread. A heartier stew combines canned beef with sautéed onions, beef stock, carrots, and potatoes. Add cauliflower, apple cider vinegar, salt and pepper during the last 10 minutes, and finish with cornstarch to help thicken the result.
It's the showdown of the century, the Royal Rumble of the food world. Classic corned beef versus good old Spam. But what are the actual differences between these two tin titans? The main difference between Spam and canned corned beef is the type of meat that is in the can. The name of canned corned beef is pretty clear about the main ingredient, of course. It's made of beef. Spam is slightly less obvious, although the fact that its name rhymes with ham is a bit of a giveaway. This second product contains pork, mostly. You might assume that Spam and corned beef are highly processed with tons of preservatives and additives, but they're actually much simpler than many other products on grocery store shelves. In fact, both have fewer than 10 ingredients. Libby's canned corned beef ingredients label lists only water, sugar, salt, and sodium nitrite after beef. Spam has a similar ingredient list, swapping out beef with pork, and the extra addition of potato starch. Compare that to Oscar Mayer hot dogs, for example, which list 13 ingredients including mechanically separated chicken and turkey, along with several additives. Both Spam and corned beef look pretty good in comparison. Sodium nitrite is the sole additive found in Spam and canned corned beef, and it's also present in most other cured meats. There have been some health concerns surrounding this preservative, since some research links it to an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. That said, eating excessive amounts of any animal protein may cause heart disease and high blood pressure.
Oh, this is a big one. You hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you, honey.
If you're worried, just avoid eating too much of it. Put simply, Spam is cheaper than canned corned beef.
Spam. It's a lot of meat, but not a lot of money.
The fact that pork is usually cheaper than beef helps explain the difference in price. Meat prices depend on the amount of feed animals need over their lifetime up until slaughter. Producers raise pigs only 5 or 6 months, while most cattle live between 12 and 22 months. That makes cows far more costly to raise and farm. Interestingly, the per-pound prices of fresh meat versus canned meat are actually pretty similar. That might make Spam look like a bad deal. It costs about the same as pork chops, but has worse taste and texture. But that's not quite the case. During the canning process, manufacturers cook the meat, meaning that the weight on the label is the exact amount the consumer can eat. But if you buy fresh meat and cook it, it loses some of its weight and size. For example, 1 pound of raw ground beef reduces to 3/4 of a pound when cooked. That means cans tend to enjoy a better price-quantity value. Obviously, though, that's not to say the same is true when it comes to quality. Search for canned meat on any major grocery store website, and you'll probably find several flavors of Spam versus a much smaller selection of corned beef.
Hormel's website lists 12 types of Spam, including classic, teriyaki, jalapeno, and maple. Redditors seem to hold a number of opinions about which is best. Many recommended the classic, low-sodium, bacon, or teriyaki flavors. Korean barbecue seems to be an exception, with customers rating it around 3.5 stars on Hormel's website. The biggest complaints concern the unauthentic Korean spices and an unpleasant flavor combination. If you head to the canned goods aisle for corned beef, you're going to have the choice of about 3 flavor options: classic, a low-sodium version, and canned corned beef hash. You'll still have a wide range of brands to pick from, though, since so many companies make canned corned beef. That creates a wider market with more variation in quality and price than is available for Spam. Libby's may be the biggest name in the corned beef game, but Goya, Iberia, Ox and Palm, Armour, and even Hormel all pack and sell it too. The textures of Spam and canned corned beef are undeniably different. Spam comes out of the can in a unified block. It's squishy, spongy, and easy to cut into slices. Canned corned beef, on the other hand, is drier and stringier. You can easily identify individual meat fibers, too. Whereas Spam is homogeneous, canned corned beef seems more heterogeneous. It doesn't always come out of the can in a whole block and isn't as easy to cut into slices.
Spam. Don't knock it till you've fried it.
The difference in texture between the two canned meats has to do with the difference in ingredients, as well as the canning and cooking process. To make Spam, machines grind pork and mix it with salt and potato starch. Cans are filled with this meat paste before being sealed and cooked in a pressure cooker.
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
The potato starch is likely the ingredient that gives Spam its uniform, solid texture. Canned corned beef plants use a similar, but not quite identical process. Raw beef is cut, cubed, or shredded, but never ground into a paste. Starch isn't added either, giving the final product a looser texture. Like Spam, though, corned beef is most often cooked after the can is packed. Cans of corned beef and Spam have interesting shapes, nothing like the cylinders used for other types of canned food. Factories usually pack corned beef into rectangular cans, larger at the base than the top with a key attached. Spam, meanwhile, comes in an untapered, oblong receptacle with rounded corners. The resulting shape is somewhere between an oval and a rectangle, and has a pull ring for easy opening. It's been a long road to get to this point. The history of canned meats began when innovator Nicolas Appert of France first packed meat into heavy glass and ceramic containers. It was the early 1800s, and Appert won a cash prize for his idea from none other than Napoleon Bonaparte.
Oh, sacre bleu!
The French emperor needed a more reliable way to feed soldiers, and canned meat seemed promising. After this, English inventor Peter Durand proposed using metal cylinders instead. Others improved upon Appert and Durand's ideas over the next century. In the 1870s, manufacturers such as Arthur A. Libby and William J. Wilson began placing preserved meat into rectangular cans. They may have thought it would be easier to remove the product and then slice evenly. Interestingly, Wilson wanted to patent this model, but the commissioner at the time refused, citing that the St. Louis Beef Canning Company and Robert D. Hunter already used this type of can. 50 years later, George A. Hormel put ham in a can. He imitated earlier canners, choosing to use a rectangular design. Nicolas Appert invented canned meat to feed soldiers and sailors when fresh food was unavailable. More than a century later, World War II put millions of soldiers from around 70 countries in that same situation. Governments used these preserved products to sustain militaries far from home. Britain fed soldiers mainly canned corned beef and hardtack, and men on the front lines created their own recipes to make the dry, stringy canned meat more palatable. Stew with ground hardtack crumbs, corned beef, and the occasional vegetable was preferable to eating the stuff cold from the can. The United States, on the other hand, provided its men with both Spam and Hormel's infamous K rations, which consisted of canned ham with vegetables and eggs. The company had just put Spam on the market in 1937, which turned out to be something of a lucky strike due to the coming war. By 1944, the U.S. government was purchasing 90% of the company's products to feed its troops. In total, Hormel shipped around 133 million cans overseas to feed U.S. soldiers, Allied forces, and civilians. But while Spam tasted better cold than canned corned beef did, the troops still didn't love it. Hormel's website makes no secret of the fact, sharing this quote from Dwight Eisenhower. "I ate my share of Spam along with millions of soldiers. I'll even confess to a few unkind remarks about it. As former commander-in-chief, I officially forgive you your only sin, sending us so much of it." Your preference of canned meat likely depends on where you live. If you're from Puerto Rico or Samoa, your family probably has several well-loved corned beef recipes, such as hash or stew. If you're from Korea or Hawaii, you probably eat Spam and musubi, sandwiches or army-based stew. History and geography forced these regions to develop a taste for canned protein. The British Navy likely introduced canned corned beef to the Caribbean in the 1800s while combating the slave trade. Meanwhile, South Korea began its love affair with Spam because of the American soldiers who were stationed there, as many traded rations for services from locals. Islands such as Samoa and Hawaii hosted military bases and had limited access to fresh meat, so these products quickly became popular.
People have an emotional attachment to Spam because we all grew up with Spam.
For obvious reasons, areas with cattle and abundant fresh meat have remained generally uninterested by Spam and corned beef. Fray Bentos, Uruguay is one example. You won't find canned meat easily in the grocery stores there. Ironically though, one of the largest corned beef canning factories in the world opened in Fray Bentos in 1863. In the years after, the town revolutionized the canned meat industry. Despite that, the locals have so much access to fresh beef that canned corned beef simply isn't eaten as a regular part of their diet. 100 years ago, the word Spam was meaningless. Ever since the product came out in 1937, however, people have wanted to know what it means.
What do you think Spam stands for?
A super protein, ambivalent meat.
Hormel plays up to the mystery surrounding the brand name too. Its official website reads, "The real answer is known by only a small circle of former Hormel Foods executives, and probably Nostradamus. If you've only been eating sliced Spam sandwiches or mixing cubes into your macaroni and cheese, you'll be pleased to find that there are endless recipes for the stuff, and they come from all around the world. Take, for example, Spam musubi. This Hawaiian dish places a slice of Spam on a rectangle of rice before wrapping it all in a strip of nori. It's mostly reminiscent of sushi, but without using raw fish. If you're craving Korean flavors, try a recipe for kimchi fried rice with Spam. This is the perfect thing to whip up if you're short on time and have some leftover cooked white rice in the refrigerator. Sauté the 3 main ingredients with pepper flakes, then add soy sauce for flavor. After that, scramble in some eggs. This recipe only takes about 15 minutes, and it's incredibly flavorful and filling, to boot.